Skyrim has many guilds, and thus many leaders, at least at the start of the game. By the end of the game, almost every guild is led by John Skyrim, which probably shows you the state of their leadership beforehand. But before we come waltzing in for our 80-second playthrough, each guild has a recognisable head of varying quality. So, which of these leaders is the best at their job, and which are the stinkers? It's also worth noting what a guild actually is in this case, which does not include the Civil War factions because they're full armies. We also won't include the super minor factions, like the tribal orcs calling you bloodkin, because you're not actually a part of them, the Coven of Namira, you know, the cannibal ones, or ones you can't join, like the Vigilant of Stendar, Silverhand, and so on. Long story short, we're looking at the Blades with Delphine, the Companions with Kodlak, the College of Winterhold with Archmage Savos Aren, the Thieves Guild with Mercer Frey, the Dark Brotherhood with Astrid, the Bard's College with... God, what's this guy's name? Viarmo, that's it, Viarmo. Dawnguard with Isran, and the Volkihar clan with Harkon. So let's begin with our bottom entry, the worst of the worst who's intentionally being the worst, number 8, Mercer Frey.
Our actions have always been one and the same. Both of us lie, cheat, and steal to further our own end.
Now, at the bottom of our list at number 8, Mercer Frey is quite ironic in that he's actually scarily competent. Most people on the lower end of this list are going to get dogged on by me for being both incompetent and losing their guild's identity. This isn't Mercer Frey's problem. He's an extremely good thief. Perhaps the best in Skyrim, but his competency is what makes him such a bad guild leader, because he's doing everything he can to harm the Thieves Guild and make sure that no one finds out. Some people are trying their best to be a good leader and failing. That's not Mercer Frey. When we join a Thieves Guild, it's down on its luck and in a rough patch, a common theme with most of these guilds, and this has all been under Mercer Frey's leadership, despite the guild having many competent members. Then we find out that Frey had actually murdered Gallus, the former leader, blamed it on Carlia, a fellow Nightingale, and took the position as guildmaster for himself to basically siphon funds from the guild over time, making himself progressively richer while the guild got poorer. You know, this almost seems like an allegory for the modern economic scene across the world. Maybe Todd's a soothsayer. He's actively working against the Thieves Guild, and because he's so good at being a thief under everyone's noses, he gets away with this for 20 years. 20 years. That's practically how long Bethesda is spending on making The Elder Scrolls 6. You can see this in the narrative, as he is the final villain of the quest, and quite frankly it takes the last Dragonborn to even put a stop to him, but his actions go beyond just siphoning from the Thieves Guild and overseeing their slow, steady downfall over 20 years. He has actively made every thief worse by taking some of their luck. You see, Frey was a Nightingale with Carlia and Gallus. That was the Trinity, but instead of serving Nocturnal, he stole the skeleton key and closed the portal to the Daedric Prince's realm, the Ebonmere. If you want to know more about Nocturnal specifically, and how she doesn't really seem to care about her skeleton key at all, which is essentially just her house key, I have a whole video here. But the important part is that the Ebonmere allows the spirits of the Nightingales to pass in and out of the Evergloam, Nocturnal's realm. The reason this is so important to thieves all around the world is that, when the spirits of the Nightingales pass through the portal, they give Nocturnal's worshippers, who tend to be thieves, their uncanny luck, at least according to Carlia. With it shut, the Thieves Guild's luck was, quite literally, running out, making every part of their job harder. Again, Frey did this for 20 years. He made all thieves worse for 2 decades. And this was all intentional. He never had the guild's best interests at heart. A lot of other guild leaders contribute to their guild's downfall out of stupidity, incompetence, or just arrogance, but Mercer Frey planned it all for 2 decades, and no one but the last Dragonborn could stop him. It's weirdly admirable, but it does make him the worst guildmaster here, because he's actively and intentionally hurting the guild he's meant to be leading. You know, I almost want to say good job Mercer, because he's gunned for this placement and he's actually made it. But let's move on to the second worst, who's nowhere near as competent. Number 7, Astrid of the Dark Brotherhood.
This sanctuary has been my entire life since I was a young woman. That's when I first discovered my, shall we call it, aptitude for elimination.
Like Mercer Frey, Astrid is overseeing the Dark Brotherhood in a straight decline, but unlike Mercer, she's not actively trying to ruin the place. Now granted, the current state of the Dark Brotherhood isn't entirely because of Astrid, like with Mercer, but her actions in the questline are very questionable. For one, she's reformatted the Brotherhood away from the whole Sithis and Night Mother leadership, with a Black Hand, to her simply being the one in charge. The entire point of the Dark Brotherhood, instead of being a freelance assassination group, is that they have this cult-like reverence for Sithis and sending souls to the void, but it seems that Astrid is largely against this, so that she can have control of her Dark Brotherhood pocket. This isn't really the worst thing she does though. When this cult element arrives on their doorstep to remind them what the Dark Brotherhood should really be about, through Cicero and the Night Mother's arrival, the Dark Brotherhood now has an effective way to listen to those doing the Black Sacrament and react quickly. The lack of speed in the reaction is why we, the last Dragonborn, get abducted in the first place. Now us getting abducted potentially leads to the end of the Dark Brotherhood, because we can always turn her into a piece of burned jerky, get out the abandoned shack, and then go remove the Brotherhood from Tamriel. But we can't blame Astrid for that. She didn't necessarily know things could play out that way. I suppose it depends when in the story you get kidnapped, because if it's after Alduin, the wiser plan would have been to let our actions with Grella the Kind slide. Still, we turn out to be the listener, the one with the hotline to the Night Mother and the Void. We're meant to be the one to make the Dark Brotherhood tick, but what does Astrid do? She gives us up to the Empire and Penitus Oculatus to try to save the other members of the Dark Brotherhood, and how does that go? Well, the only survivors are us, Nazir and Babette, plus potentially Cicero depending on our choices. Long story short, Astrid almost destroyed the Dark Brotherhood by selling out one of her assassins, a member of her family, and the Listener, and this is all after going away from what the guild should have been in the first place. A cult-like group of professional killers bound to and instructed by Sithis, the Night Mother, and the Void. She almost ruined the guild with her actions, and even before that, her actions throughout were not what the leader of the Dark Brotherhood should be doing. Her tenure in general was poor, but at the very least she didn't nearly end the world, like our number 6 entry, Savos Aren.
I never meant for any of what happened here. Tried to seal it up, lock it away forever, but now it all comes out again.
On the surface, Savos seems like an adequate archmage. Not exceptional, but not terrible. He's respectful, diplomatic, and has cool robes. The thing is, throughout most of the College of Winterhold questline, he doesn't really do anything. I have no idea if this guy is any good at magic. I know that when he was an apprentice with his mates, he got folded by a dragon priest so badly that he locked his friends in that dungeon forevermore. Now he's probably got stronger since then, right? Like, surely. Nelolf doesn't really rate him, but I mean, he hasn't gone back to deal with the situation, so maybe he believes he isn't strong enough to take on Mordecai after all this time, but that also might be because he's so ashamed of what happened in that ruin. His actual power is beside the point though. The point I'm trying to make is that as a student, we don't see much of him being our archmage. We don't see him cast magic that much or really teach. Tolfdir is the guy we spend most of our time with, who teaches us, guides us, and so on. And while the College of Winterhold isn't in the best spot at the time of Skyrim, new apprentices are still coming in, and it is operating about as well as it has in recent memory. The Great Collapse is largely to blame for the college's current reputation, which isn't Savos Aren's fault. But do you know what is? The entire Eye of Magnus situation. Why, in the name of Kyne, did you let a Thalmor agent anywhere near the Eye of Magnus? In fact, why did you put it in the main hall, where anyone in the college, including your apprentices, could tamper with it? I know it doesn't play out this way, but what if J'zargo wanted to use it to become a supreme mage, and then he accidentally blows up the world? At least to have it in your office. The place is big enough to house it. More than that, despite not allowing politics to enter the decision making behind the college, he let Ancano, a member of the Thalmor, in as his advisor, which, given everything the Thalmor have done up until this point, and their relationship with Skyrim specifically, you gotta ask, why would he do that? If he were a high elf, maybe you could justify it, but he's not, he's a Dunmer. In his dialogue, Savos states a few times that he wants the college to be more accepted by the Nords of Skyrim, but having a Thalmor advisor was never going to help with that in the first place, so it seems a bit hypocritical. More than that, Ancano ends up being his greatest failure, not locking his friends in a dungeon with a dragon priest, since he ends up killing Savos and nearly destroys the world with the Eye of Magnus. Were it not for us, Savos' actions would have not only destroyed the college, but the world. For the most part, Savos really isn't that bad, but the decision making around the Eye of Magnus, and Ancano specifically, was so dire that he almost has to be this low for them. Seriously, the world nearly ends, and this causes magical anomalies to affect Skyrim long after, likely making Nords trust the college even less. We, as the new Archmage, spent a lot of time making up for Savos' biggest error. It's dumb, and he's dumb for letting it happen. So good job, Savos. You get to round out my bottom 3. I probably could have put you lower because of the whole world-threatening thing, but outside of that, he seems okay, I guess, which puts him above the other 2. But let's not get it twisted. These 3 were so bad that they somehow rank below the main villain of an expansion, Harkon, leader of the Volkihar clan.
In an age long forgotten to history, I ruled as a mighty king. My domain was vast, my riches endless, and my power infinite.
Harkon is a monumental moron, but he's also incredibly lazy as a vampire. This has always been funny to me because as a mortal, he sacrificed 1,000 souls to Merlog Bowl to get those Twilight powers, meaning he was very productive and even says that he used to be a king. But as a vampire lord, he sits in his hands forevermore because he got brain rotted by an Elder Scrolls prophecy made by a salty sun priest and lost his wife and daughter. As I said before, he says he used to be a great king, but used to? Why used to? You're the most powerful vampire in the country, and you do nothing with it until your daughter suddenly reappears with a stranger, and in the span of about a week, that stranger, whether with a Dawnguard or in your very court, turns you into strawberry jam. Hell, your wife, whose blood you needed for potentially thousands of years, depending on how old you think the Volkihars are, went in a portal hidden in your literal garden, and you never found her despite how bloody obvious the puzzle is in there. Plus, we know he went in there because he trashed the place. I'm sorry, this guy's an idiot. He's got the brain capacity of a TikTok-addled toddler. There's also the whole thing of blotting out the sun. Now, say it with me, if you blot out the sun, all the plants die. If all the plants die, then all the animals die. If all the animals die, then all the people die. And if there are no people, what are vampires gonna drink? So they all die, effectively ending the vampire race. Beyond that, Harkon's main flaw is his obsession. It tore apart his family. and him reaching out to find the Elder Scrolls and Auriel's bow led to the creation of the Dawnguard and his eventual defeat. If the last Dragonborn sides with the Dawnguard, it also results in the near complete destruction of his clan, besides his daughter and mother, whom he was going to sacrifice anyway, and who had actually left the clan. The worst thing about it is that most vampires aren't even that bothered by the sun. To be fair, the effects of the sun on vampires is variable depending on the vampire, but for Harkon specifically, he should be fine. We spend all this time with Serana and Daylight, who's a pure-blooded vampire like him, and she complains about it as much as we Brits have in this seemingly endless stream of heatwaves, but that's kind of it. She basically just says, "It's a bit sunny, innit? It's a bit warm." But, according to Harkon, this is enough of an inconvenience for him to go insane and become obsessed over a prophecy. This is the crux of the issue for Harkon. Now, credit to him, he kept his clan alive for however long he's been around, has enough reach to become a country-spanning threat, and has the power to keep everyone else in his clan in check. But that's about all I'm giving him credit for. He's still an idiot, and is weirdly not that proactive, since he basically spends all of his time sitting in Castle Volkihar, despite being the clan's greatest asset. He's their strongest warrior, but he makes his underlings do all the work for him. Plus, the people below him don't care all too much if he gets replaced by a new lord. So, you know, it's not like he's all that well liked. Still, at least when he threatened the world, he meant to, unlike Savos. That's practically what's keeping him up here. Well, up as relative. That and his perceived power. But we're finally out of the bottom half, and while it pains me to say it, somehow Delphine has made it up at number 4.
I was one of the few who escaped. For a long time all I cared about was staying alive, and taking revenge on the Thalmor when I could.
Now, before I go on a rant against Delphine, let's go over the things she objectively does well. She is very good at intel gathering, has evaded the Thalmor for decades, is actually an exceptional agent, and seems to be adequate when it comes to training new blades. As you can tell with the other guild leaders, the bar is in oblivion, so that's about all she needs to leapfrog the bottom 4 in my mind. She is also reasonably important in helping the Dragonborn save the world. Her main contribution is finding Esbern, who then tells you about Alduin's Wall, which leads us to getting Dragonrend, although if you think about it, if we were just more insistent about meeting Paarthurnax sooner, we might have been able to sidestep the whole thing and simply ask Party Snacks if he knew an anti-Alduin weapon, which probably would have brought up Dragonrend anyway. It didn't happen that way though, so Delphine definitely had her uses in the main story. But that's about where the positives end. The negatives stem from her not being able to translate her skills as a strong agent to a leader. I talk about this a lot in my Blades video, but she seemingly misinterprets the point of the Blades and mixes it up with the Dawnguard, the sort of father organisation. It's a similar-ish case with Astrid, where both these leaders lose the identity of the organisation they're meant to be leading, and the organisation itself is on its last legs. The thing that gives both the Blades and the Dawnguard identity is the Dragonborn. The entire point of both organisations is to be in service to the Dragonborn. Now we are the Dragonborn, obviously, but she is not leading the Blades to be in service to us, and that effectively kills any kind of revival before it can begin. Whether you agree that Paarthurnax should be slain, doesn't really matter. The fact that Delphine, who is meant to be leading an organisation to serve and advise you, is forcing you into a decision with an ultimatum is stupid. She's shooting herself in the foot. I wouldn't have had a problem if she advised us to take out Paarthurnax. That's fine, but what she needs to understand, for her Blades to be a true revival, is that she needs the Dragonborn for the right authority to bring others out of hiding. She can't gather the Blades to her little corner of Skyrim with the Thalmor on their tail without assurances, like the Dragonborn, who is exceedingly powerful and enough of a deterrent to keep them safe. She is also obsessed with the idea that the blades should be like the Dawnguard, essentially dragon slayers. But again, she needs John Skyrim for this. We're the only one who can put dragons down for good. Realistically, if word got out that Delphine was spotted in Skyhaven Temple, which shouldn't be that hard to hear considering that a lot of Forsworn were taken out on the way there, and she can appear in the peace meeting at High Hrothgar, where a Thalmor representative appears, that's lights out. The problem Delphine has is that she needs to learn her place to be a true Grand Master. She probably struggles with that, considering she operated in a time when the Blades didn't have a Dragonborn to serve, but for the sake of her Blades' success, she needs to get over that quickly, and she doesn't. Otherwise, she might as well lead a dragon-slaying intel-gathering mercenary group. On top of that, she is incapable of getting recruits without the Dragonborn, showing that her version can't get off the ground without us, and she then becomes less of a guild leader and more of the one that wears the pants in the relationship of two. Still, she has enough good traits to be in the top 4, but I would say this is where the bad guild leaders end. The remaining 3 don't necessarily have a problem with identity, but this doesn't mean we're looking into the good ones yet either, because we're looking at the Bard's College and, this guy... let me check my notes here. Viarmo.
Welcome to the Bard's College. You already know what the f going on.
Now, that's it, Viarmo. He's fine. I'm tempted to just leave it there, to be honest, but let's give him his flowers. He clearly cares about the college, and the negatives around the place are completely out of his control. A civil war is the reason why the burning of King Olaf is being stopped, which isn't his fault. But it's clear that he cares deeply about the Bard's College, and it's a place that is adequately doing its job. Bard alumni are getting jobs in Skyrim, like Mikael at the Bannered Mare, and it is a place with a seemingly steady influx of students. They're getting proper lessons, and Viarmo has plenty of dialogue where he checks in with his teachers to see how the students are getting on. He also displays different behaviour with different teachers depending on their attitude, giving a pep talk to one while being more strict with another. He encourages Inga, warns Panzia not to play favourites, and basically tells Gerard that he has to teach, so he's got to suck it up. He seems passionate and like he's keeping things running pretty smoothly for the most part, other than that the bards seemingly lose property in random places, which is a bit strange. And you can't ask for too much more. He doesn't train us to be much of a bard though, so I'm not going to put him in the good category. I'm that salty. We'll just call him alright. Now let's get to the guildmasters who are actually good in my mind, our top 2, and I have to say there's not much in it between these two, but Kodlak of the Companions is next.
He made a bargain with the witches of Glenmoral Coven. If the companions would hunt in the name of their lord Hircine, we would be granted great power.
Kodlak's in a bit of a weird situation. He's not really the leader of the companions, but as a harbinger, he is the closest thing the guild has to a true leader. He has kept the guild true to its identity, and that has brought it much respect throughout Skyrim. He has kept the companions neutral in a time when being truly neutral is a difficult choice, which doesn't seem to have angered the people of Skyrim, strangely. His companions are still a formidable fighting force too. They haven't been watered down. We are introduced to them slaying a giant, pretty impressive stuff, and later in the game, these companions go on dragon slaying quests, which is pretty crazy. A lot of his issues stem from him not being the true leader of the companions, but rather a steady hand. If he had reeled Skjor and Ayla in a bit, maybe Skjor wouldn't have died. You could maybe point to the continued use of the beast blood in the circle as a flaw of Kodlak's, but again, he reiterates that it's not his place to tell the others what to do, only suggest it. Still, he's respected greatly by the companions, with Vilkas, another member of the circle, essentially regarding him as the leader, even if he doesn't have the title formally. He is a wise and strong example for others to follow, with his guidance keeping an organisation without a leader weirdly quite organised. Whelps come in with missions to ease them into companion life from the circle, then things evolve from there. There's an actual pipeline to not only joining the companions but improving under them, although selection could be a bit of an issue. Uthgard the Unbroken states that she accidentally killed another companion hopeful in a trial, and Arnbjorn, a Dark Brotherhood member and the husband of Astrid, was not only a companion but a circle member, if his beast blood is anything to go by. We don't know if Kodlak was Harbinger during this, but if so, his vetting process needs a bit of work. Then again, it seems that he has perhaps learned from the Uthgard situation, having Vilkus be the one to test us. You could dock a point against Kodlak for the way he died, being the only one to lose his life in the Silver Hand's attack on Jorrvaskr, but he is old. He's literally called Kodlak Whitemane. He makes it to Sovngarde too, and I'd argue he's one of the most likeable guild leaders around, always keeping to the idea that he is not your leader but a guide. It seems like he's around a lot to give us words of wisdom before he does pass. Still, he's not a leader in the truest sense, which is why I put him at number 2, so that leaves our number 1 pick, and when I started this list, I didn't think he'd be number 1. But congratulations Isran, you've done it.
Be on your guard at all times. Avoid sleep if you can. Sleep is for the weak.
We have this idea that Isran is some hardcore, cruel and somewhat zealous guy, who burns bridges and doesn't really build them, but it's clear that the man who had that reputation has grown since. For one, he actually shows some remorse and empathy from time to time. He tells Tolan, the Vigilant Astendar guy, that he's sorry for what happened to them, and his final interaction with Serana shows him softening somewhat to her. Despite the vampire threat being largely over, Gunmar, Serene and Florentius stay, meaning that Isran has done enough in that time to get the trio to stay by him, which is quite something considering that none of them wanted anything to do with Isran when we first met them. On the topic of Florentius specifically, he is wise enough to know that the Dawnguard could do with his help, despite not liking the man himself, and acknowledges that he needs other people's efforts. Despite being so stony on the outside, he immediately gets to teaching Angmar, and while he does voice his initial doubts about the boy, he encourages the farmer while he learns to use the crossbow. Plus, in a very short period of time, he manages to set up a guild that can easily repel vampire attacks. Similar attacks destroyed the Hall of the Vigilant, but when they came to Fort Dawnguard's doorsteps, there weren't any casualties on his side. He's accepting of basically anyone in his ranks, even Serana after a while, and should get a lot of credit as the guild's founder. But he's not perfect. His main flaw in my eyes is his stubbornness, not wanting to give us more resources to help in our adventure when we're doing 90% of the work, because he views it as a waste of time. He changes his tune toward the end of Dawnguard, leading the entire guild to take Castle Volkihar by our side, but it would have been a lot nicer to have more help earlier. Granted, we can take the equipment we need from the castle and have a troll or husky follower as time goes on, so he doesn't leave us out to dry entirely. And with Serana by our side, it probably should be enough, but some proactiveness from him would have been nice. It also feels like he spends the entire expansion setting up the Dawnguard, and by the time everything is set, we rock up with Oriel's bow to end the fight. You could argue his wide-reaching recruitment style is a bit of an issue too. After all, he sends us, someone he's just met, into a dangerous assignment that could lead us to become a vampire lord and initially siding with Harkon. This then leads us to destroying the Dawnguard in an optional quest at the end of the DLC, but to be fair to him, it's not easy to predict that a wannabe vampire hunter would side with the vampires like a week later. It's not exactly the most logical decision making. And to be fair, you can probably blame Bethesda's writing of Dawnguard's introduction more than anything else here. If you do side with the Dawnguard though, Isran respects your contributions enough to allow you to recruit Dawnguard members as followers, which is neat, and he will take the time to train you, showing he really does care about giving his hunters the best chance in the field, rather than being a heartless backseat general. He gets proper stuck in on the raid on Castle Volkihar too, so he's no coward. I do wish he did a bit more in Dawnguard itself, since he and Harkon spend most of the time being very passive, although at least Isran gets the excuse of setting up his guild, and that's probably quite time consuming. Think about it this way, in a very short span of time, he made a guild better at fighting vampires than the Vigilance of Stendarr, although those guys just kinda suck. He also has an eye for outfit design because look at the Dawnguard armour. So there you go, Isran, take your crown with a smile. Although I don't think I've ever seen him smile.
Y'all are trash. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Y'all are trash. Like, y'all are so trash. I want you to know that I'm talking to you.
Thank you for watching this ranking video. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and while I'm sure most people will disagree, probably, it really opened my eyes as to how bad most of these leaders are. Let's do a quick roundup of the bad ones. Mercer's actively striving to be the worst. A lot of Astrid's decision making is suspect. Savos' thought process with Ancano and the Eye of Magnus nearly ended the world. Harkon's as dumb as bricks, and Delphine has a strange mix of arrogance and idiocy. While I think Mercer is clearly the worst guild leader, he's one of the better characters here, and quite frankly, he's actually good at his job. It's just that his job is screwing over his own guild. I actually think he's probably the best villain in Skyrim, but let me know who you think the best villain is. Now, I'm not too precious of the order of the next three. I think you can maybe swap Astrid, Savos and Harkon around in whatever order you want, and I wouldn't really complain too much. Delphine does enough to keep her at 4th in my opinion, because A, she's actually important to the main story, and B, she is a very good agent. Because the Bard's College is so nothing, the guy in charge, whatever his name was, is practically 3rd for keeping the place running okay and actually caring. You can probably interchange Kodlak and Isran if you wanted, but Kodlak's not really the leader, whereas Isran definitely is. So that's how I see things. Want to tell me how wrong I am? Do it with the whole YouTube ritual of liking, commenting and subscribing. And if you enjoyed, perhaps I'll see you in another video later down the line.
The wolf bore its fangs and spread its claws and tore at its own hide. Drink the blood and become my sons, or by dawn you'll never survive. And so the pack was born again as the wolves of Jorrvaskr, to rule in life and serve in death as the moonlight's bound hunter. And so the pack was born again as the wolves of Jorrvaskr, to rule in life and serve in death as the moonlight's dark hunter.